Participants, it is our honor and privilege to welcome our inaugural speaker, Professor Rupinder Singh sir, to this program. Professor Singh is Chartered Engineer by Institute of Engineers India and UGC Research Award. Currently, he is Professor at the Department of Mechanical Engineering, National Institute of Technology, National Institute of Teachers, Technical Teachers Training and Research, that is NITTR, Chandigarh. Professor Singh received his PhD degree in Mechanical Engineering in 2006 from CIET Patiala, Masters of Technology in Production Engineering in 2001, and Bachelors of Technology in Production Engineering in 1999 from Punjab Technical University. He has more than 20 years of teaching and research experience in production and industrial engineering, with special emphasis in additive manufacturing, non-conventional machining, and casting. He has guided large number of PhD and master students as well as coordinated 17 finance research projects. He has received several scientific awards. He has worked as evaluator of projects for international research agencies as well as examiner of PhD thesis for many Indian universities. He is the guest editor of several international journals, books editor, and advisor for many international conferences. In addition, he has also published as author and co-author more than 20 monographs, 80 books, 80 book chapters, and 550 articles in journals and conferences, out of which more than 250 articles are indexed in SCI. His Scopus H index is 34 plus, and he has around 4,500 citations. So it is a great privilege to have Professor Singh with us as our inaugural speaker. He will be delivering on 4-dimensional printing for innovative design. Sir, I welcome you to this FDP.
Thank you, Professor Mahapatra, Honorable Vice Chancellor of the University, Head of Department, the coordinator of this course. This is really a privilege for me to be the part of this program, and I'm really happy to be the part of a event under the National Mission for Development of the Technology for the Research, of course, which is one of the main point in present education policy that has been recently launched. And I'm really happy that the production engineering department is taking a lead for this new technology. On behalf of NITTR Chandigarh, I extend the full support for the development of this particular technology. As a national institute, we have some facilities available for this type of the technology at the national level, and we are ready for any sort of a support. So now, not taking much of the time on the discussion, let us strictly come to the business. So I'm going to share my screen for the discussion of the day. Is my screen visible and audible? Is the screen visible?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Okay. Okay, thank you for the update. So the discussion for the course is on 3D printing. So I will be taking some time on 3D printing, and I will move to the 4D printing for some innovation. And of course, since the course is on 3D printing, and we are interested in the design aspect also. So you see, now the things are moving even up to the 9th dimension. So we will see what actually it is, and how this can be really good for some innovation in design and other practices. So let us have some few title slides before I start the discussion on the 4D printing. You see, as per the Niti Yog website, even the government is making a lot of efforts for making the manufacturing sector really, fruitful. But since from last 15 years, the contribution of the manufacturing sector is just 15% in the GDP of the country. Uh, of course, if we exclude the COVID period, then the situation is almost similar. Whereas once we compare with the countries like China, this contribution of the manufacturing sector is 34%. So what the Niti Aayog website says, there may be some sort of a policy failure at our end, right? So we are really interested in increasing the contribution of the manufacturing sector in a big way. To address this problem, in 2004, Government of India set up a National Manufacturing Competitive Council, and the idea was to increase the contribution from 12 to 14% to 25 to 35%. If you see the website right now also, the target is 25% by 2025, right? If we increase this contribution by 10%, it is expected that there will be 100 million jobs for the engineers, right? Not only the government, but even the public sector and even the private sector people, they are saying that we have to increase the contribution of the manufacturing sector. Like one of the quote I have mentioned for N. Ravi Chandra, who is a executive director of BHEL Hyderabad. So he expressed that the contribution of the manufacturing sector must be increased from 15% to 25%, right? But there are some issues. Let us understand. Like we have a problem in the infrastructure. We have a problem with respect to the finance. We have a problem with respect to the land acquisition. We have labor laws issues, right? You see, because of these hindrance, the big players are not coming, and we have a problem in investment, right? So what should be the solution? One is we should leave, or we can have some alternative solution. So in one of the seminar for manufacturing excellence, which was organized by CII and Government of Andhra, it was concluded that innovation in product and process should be the key driver for the growth in the manufacturing sector. Now this is the key point from where actually the further discussion will move. We are interested in some innovation. It may be through design. It may be using some tools like 3D printing, which can help me in product development or a process development. If I am developing this product first, I am developing the process first. This will be helping me in getting a loyal share in the market. Now let me give you one example before we actually start the business of the 3D printing. You see, in our country, a lot of people move from one place to another place for the religious tourism, like, and if you go to any of the this type of the religious place, you will see there are a lot of product that we want to purchase as a souvenir, as a token of remembrance for our near and dear ones. So this is a big business, and you see, most of the places you go, pre-COVID period, most of the product were the Chinese made, right? But even because of the poor quality, we used to buy those products. The reason was the low cost, and the second reason was the innovation that they have made. Like for example, if you go to any religious place, right, you want some souvenir which should be giving you the sort of a remembrance of that place and some added features. Right, you go to some hill station, you can see there are some some keys or some sort of a souvenir with a token of remembrance. This is quite common thing, but most of the time all those products were made in China. So what the people have done at that place, lot of market survey, lot of market research, and then value added product, so which are of course required to you for your day-to-day needs, as well as low cost, and it is performing more than one function. Like typically we are in production engineering department, so we know the principle of motion economy, right? So if I can do the multiple jobs with a single tool, definitely it will help me in reducing the downtime, right? So similarly, if I am doing some product development which may be in the form of a simple religious souvenir or in the form of some useful functional prototype, it has to have a multi-dimensional activities, multi-dimensional aspects, and if it can perform those, definitely it will have a more acceptability in the market. So if more acceptability means the lion share in the market, right? Is it audible, please? Is it audible? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir. It is
Okay,
audible.
okay, okay, thank you. Okay, so we were discussing. So this is one of the data that just I want to share with you. If you see the Thomson Reuters data, this was published earlier in 2014. Then I have up to 2020 also. We are contributing just around 5% for the research in as regard to the international requirement is concerned. Whereas China, Korea, Taiwan, they are much ahead of us, right? Similarly, we say that we are good in CSE, but the contribution is again less than 2.5%. This is the third party survey. So what we need to do is we have to do the lot of first the market research, and then the product development, prototype development, and then those persons in those particular product or those industries will be having a lion share, which will launch the product first. So that is the idea of doing this. Now, rapid prototyping can be one of the tool, or the rapid manufacturing can be one of the tool for helping me in this regard to have a lion share in the market. So this is not a new concept, but people are using this rapid prototyping since long time back. This is broadly classified into three types. This I have taken from Chang and Chua paper 2005, Journal of Advanced Manufacturing Technology. You see, the rapid prototyping has been divided into three categories: additive, subtractive, and combination of additive and subtractive. Under subtractive, CNC machining is of course a highly established process. Then on additive, you can have a liquid based, can have a powder based technology, you can have a sheet based technologies, and under different categories, liquid, powder, sheet based, number of commercial technologies are available. Then for some of the typical application, we may think of the combination of additive and subtractive processes also, right? So people normally say, what will be the future of additive manufacturing? Somebody says that after 5 years, the total they will be shifting from subtractive to the additive manufacturing. But there are many good papers which are saying that, of course, the both the processes will go hand in hand, because till today, the additive manufacturing processes are still not that developed for the mass production activities like that of the subtractive manufacturing processes. But of course, in the automobile sector, it is expected that in next 5 years, the shift will be in a big way from the subtractive to the additive manufacturing part. My aim for discussion today is not to describe a particular technology, but to make this technology low cost as regard to the local needs, and then the indigenization of the technology means all you see all these technologies have been developed in the foreign world, maybe in some part of the Europe, sometimes in US or also undeveloped countries. But how we can make it make these technologies like more customized, low cost, so that this can be really useful for the local industry, local people, for the low cost manufacturing. So that is the main aim for the discussion in this class. So just for the beginners, if you see what is the rapid prototyping, so I have some data which is in the form of CAD file. That data I am giving to a printer, which, like you can see in this particular picture, is looking like a photocopier, and it is giving me the 3D object. So basically what I am having is, this is a method where I can make some physical objects which can be constructed by depositing the material layer by layer. Of course, we have a computer control data, we have a CAD file, then I can transform this into some cross section which are still virtual, and then this can be created in a physical space one after the other till we got a finished model, right? So this is another way to represent this. So I have a layer by layer, the posting of the material, and finally I got a 3D printed part. So each successive layer is bonding to the preceding layer. It may be melted or the partially melted, on a build platform till we get a 3D printed fabricated part. Now let us think of the extension of this, which is a 4D printing or a 5D printing or a 7D or 9D printing. What it can be. You see, I have a technology through which I can print a 3D part. How actually 3D printing starts, if you see the history, the commercially people started developing this 3D printing using a inkjet printer. And you see, if in an inkjet printer I have a nozzle, and from that nozzle some ink is being put at some defined locations through which is following a Cartesian coordinate system, right? And I am giving some command, and that ink, which is in the powder form, is basically sprinkled on a XY plane. Now people used in place of one nozzle, two nozzles. From one nozzle, that ink was sprinkled, and from the second nozzle, some binder was sprinkled. So layer of powder, layer of binder, layer of powder, layer of binder, it was deposited like that way. And the platform, which we call as the bed, over which this ink is being sprinkled continuously, that was being lowered down, right? So the layer of powder, layer of binder, layer of powder, layer of binder. So ultimately we get a 3D printed, final part, right? So this is one of the example of using a powder based technology. And the first company which commercialized this was the Z Corporation. This was a US based company specifically for this powder mining jet or powder based technologies, right? Now I can use polymer, I can use metal powder, I can use some photopolymers or some even biogels for printing different type of materials. So broadly we classify as a metal printer, polymer printer, and a bioprinters, right? Now my idea is, if I have a 3D printed part, can I give some sense to this 3D printed part? So that is basically adding sense to the material, is basically the adding dimension to the material. Like for example, if you go to some shopping mall, you see they will say, okay, I will give you some 9D experience. So what you are getting is like sitting in some chamber or in some platform, you may feel that if some uh, uh, spacecraft is moving in space, so you can also feel that you are in some that sort of an environment. You can hear, you can smell, you can even have a feeling of taste, you can have a feeling of touch, you can have a feeling of rain or something like that. So that means if you are adding some senses to the material, so basically as a function of time, some dimension is being added into the material. So that is basically a adding a fourth dimension. So basically what we say, the 4D printing is a printing of the smart material. Of course this is a 3D printing, but there is some smart behavior in that material, right? And this is an extension of the 3D printing. Here it becomes 4D once we add some stimulus to it. Let us understand in a very simple example. All of you must have seen a sunflower. So this sunflower normally faces towards the sun. As the movement of the earth around the sun is there, the sunflower is always facing towards the sun. And once we have a sunset, basically the face of the flower is projected on the downside. So that means there is some stimulus which is in the form of light, right? That is attracting the sunflower to move in a particular direction. So that is the stimulus, right? So which will be giving me some physical movement at some angle, like that way. So if I know a particular stimulus for a particular type of the material, I can move it in a or I can have a physical movement, I can have a change in color, I can have a smell, I can have different type of the outputs in the form of electric field, in the form of magnetic field, right? So that sort of a stimulus I must understand. And if I am controlling this in a good way, I can think of it like a 4D capabilities, I can think of 5D capabilities. Basically I am adding more senses to the material. So, what can be the reason of the smartness? The smartness can be the intrinsic property of the material, or it can be the extrinsic property of the material. Like, for example, in the intrinsic property, you can think of some self-expansion or self-contraction type properties. Like all of you must know, there is a piezoelectric material existing in nature. So, what you do in piezoelectric, if you apply some load, there is a change in dimension. Right now, if you release the load, it comes back to the original dimension. And based on this, you can think of using these type of the piezoelectric for some transducer type application. So just imagine I have printed some part with a from a material with a piezoelectric property, and I can use it for a transducer. So this will give me the 4D properties. Like sometimes these properties are not in the material. Like I can give you one example. We have a PVDF, one example of a polymer, polyvinyl difluoride, right? So we have this polymer which is having a piezo property. Now, if I print with this particular material, definitely I can have a 4D capabilities in the functional part, right? So sometimes these properties are not in the material, then we have to add on these properties, right? So this can be through reinforcement, or this can be through the metamaterials. So reinforcement, all of us understand. Like for example, if my polymer is not conducting, I can reinforce, let us say, some aluminium or some copper part powder into it, so I can make it conducting. So this will add on property to the material. Then, if we talk about the concept of the metamaterial is something which is not the giving the property because of the property of the material, but the angle and the link at which the particular material is printed or the fabricated, that is basically responsible for the you know
Hello. Hello. Sir,
Sir,
we are
is
not
not
getting
audible.
you.
Yes, yes. Please
Hello.
wait for a minute. Let sir know.
is it audible, please?
Yes, sir. Now it's audible.
Yeah. So where we left, actually, I'm not getting the response. That's why I asked. Anyway, uh, I'm again sharing my slide. Okay. Can you see this slide? Is it audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I was
Now
just
it's audible.
yeah. Have you are you comfortable with this slide now? We were discussing about the shape memory programming. Have you heard about, or I should repeat it again? Should I repeat, or
No,
Repeat it,
yes,
sir.
sir.
Repeat
Please
it.
repeat it. It's not audible, sir.
and for this slide particular 4D printing?
So this was audible.
Okay. Okay. What I request is, because maybe some connection, please update immediately if I am not audible, right? So for this 4D printing, I was just trying to explain that there can be the properties like self-expansion, self-contraction, reinforcement, and metamaterial. Where I was just trying to explain about the shape memory programming. Like we can have a one-way programming, a two-way programming, and multi-stage programming. In one-way programming, we have some material in state A. I'm giving some stimulus, which can be the magnetic field, which can be the electric field, which can be some chemical energy, or it can be in some form of the mechanical deformation. It is converting to some state B, and then with some another stimulus it is again coming to the state A. So this is a one way of programming. Then we can have a two-way programming, like I can change from materials from state A to B with some stimulus on and stimulus off. Like just think of a putting the bulb on and bulb off. Then we can have a multi-stage programming in which I am changing from A to A1, A1 to A2. So there can be the different stimulus, and I can think of multiple stages. I will show you the example as a case study how we can do this type of the programming. So this is the first technology that I am discussing with you. This is the FDM. I think all of you may be knowing this is one of the very basic process. Actually, what we are having in this process is we have a you see a setup. Here I am using a spool which is of a in the form of a thermoplastic material, which can be used for as a consumable in this process, right? So if you see this, this thermoplastic spool is being fed into a chamber. Is it audible? Okay, this is fed into a chamber where I am, uh, uh, putting this spool into the this particular chamber. I am calling it as a liquefier. Then there are some, mechanical drives which are forcing this basically wire into this nozzle. Then I am getting a very fine shape of the wire, which I am printing on this base, and finally I am getting a 3D printed part. Again, for the beginners it may be interesting to understand that I can think of using the different type of these spools, which will be forced into this mechanism, and I am able to get a 3D printed as an output. This type of technology is very cheap, and you may have a setup for a build volume of around 200 cube, maybe in 10,000 or 15,000 as a commercial setup. But you can also think of making this setup on your vertical milling, if you have a CNC milling with you, and then on the top of your vertical milling center you can think of putting a sort of a heating chamber like this. This assembly in the form of kit is available, and you can make your own feedstock filament on the way directly using this type of the extrusion setup, right? So this is very common, and this type of technology started in early 80s from MIT, right? Here you can see we have a two type of spools. One is of the dark blue color, and another is of the light blue color. This dark blue color is basically a build material that has been shown in this diagram, and another is a sport material spool. But actually, what we want to explain from here is Suppose I am interested in some typical contour where there is a, let us say, some cantilever type arrangement is there, like we have a cantilever type arrangement over here. What I need to do is I have to provide some support so that this while I am building this part, this should not fall down. So we use a support material, right? So once my printing is done, what I do actually is for this type of this this particular part, I just put it into the water, and this support material is water soluble, and the build material is basically the oil soluble. So once I put it into the water, the whole support material is dissolved and I get a final component. So this is some of the basic 3D printing processes from where actually this was commercialized in a big way. Now, my idea over here is not to explain just the technology, but to make this technology low cost indigenous, right? So I'm going to show you two case studies. First for the 3D printing, then I will move quickly to the 4D so that I can put my point of using this type of the technology for some typical applications, right? So here I am interested in recycling of the ABS and polyamide with the reinforcement of the banana fiber, and I am interested in tuning some thermal, mechanical, and the morphological properties. Now you see this ABS and PA6. These are commercially used polymers where a lot of people will say that these type of thermoplastics are commercially available, and if you go to the market, the common size of the spool that has been prepared by the extrusion process will be in the range of zero point 0.5 or 1 to 2.5 mm, right? But the most common size that has been in market for the commercial printer is 1.75 mm dia wire. So this dia, basically I am talking about the dia of the wire that is basically fed into the system. So this wire dia I am talking about, right? So for the commercial printer, most common size uses the 1.75 that is being fed to this, and finally I got a very fine shape of the in the form of the very thin strand, normally in the range of zero point 0.8, zero point 0.2. So depending upon the size of the nozzle, I can have a fine strand of the wire that is printed multiply layer by layer to get this 3D printed part, right? So in this particular example, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make my own spool as a reinforcement into this wire so that this can be useful in line with the Make in India concept. And I am interested here in using a agri waste along with the polymeric waste so that we can make our own spool. So what we observed was there is a paper of Bahrain et al. 2016, and they have basically explained that how we can condition the banana fiber. So in some of the locations in our country, we got a banana fiber in the form of waste is available. So as per this paper, how to condition the banana fiber, the steps were given. So we selected the 1000 micron length and 100 mm dia cylindrical shaped banana fiber. So those were reinforced in ABS and PA6 to make some 3D printed wires. Here actually I want to explain one concept of recycling. Basically in the line of the 3D printing, specifically if I am using a polymer, we talk about the primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary way of recycling. In primary recycling, what actually we do is we are interested in making some virgin materials, right, without reinforcement. Like for example, I have a ABS part, and now the useful life of that particular part is over. What I do is I will do some mechanical crushing, and then I will put into some extruder, and then do some sort of a heating over it, and then forcing that material through some die, and I'm just making a wire again. That is a one way of the primary recycling. Now I am interested in adding some property to this material because of the recycling. It may have lost some property. Then we think of adding some sort of a aluminium powder, copper powder,
or any organic or inorganic sort of reinforcement. Like in this particular example, we are interested in agri waste as a banana fiber. So once I do this type of reinforcement and perform this type of the activity again, right? So then it is a example of a secondary form of the recycling, right? So then if this is not sufficient, then we go for a tertiary recycling, in which we are basically using some sort of a chemical, like for example, the ABS can be dissolved in acetone. So I can think of using a reinforcement of ABS with some organic or inorganic material through some chemical dissolution, right? So that is the tertiary. And in quaternary recycling, I am basically interested in the energy recovery process, right? Like simple example is I can make a some pattern using a 3D printing for the investment casting, and I can invest those pattern for getting a final cast component, right? So these are the four ways. So in this particular example, I am interested in secondary recycling. Why secondary? Because I am reinforcing the agri waste in some defined proportion in my material, which is in ABS and polyamide 6. So to start with, we reinforce with 5% of the banana fiber in ABS and 5% of the banana fiber in PS6. So this is the setup you can see over here. Here we are using a twin screw extruder. So I have the intermeshing screws. I am putting some sort of a reinforcement in this, and finally I am getting a feedstock filament. So there are some processing parameter like temperature, nozzle dia, torque, and I am able to print this on a 3D printer. We can print some tensile coupons, some flexural coupons, and we can see their properties. Right now, this is really important to understand. For this type of the material, I'm interested in the thermal stability of the material. So this is basically a DSC analysis. You see along x-axis what I am doing. I am changing the temperature initially from room temperature to 250, then from 250 to room temperature, then again from room temperature to 250, then again from 250 to room temperature. Basically, I am varying the heating and cooling cycle. Like for example, you go to the market and purchase a bucket. One bucket you put in into your washroom, and another bucket that let us place on the rooftop. But you will observe that after a few days, the because of the aggressive environment outside, the bucket in the rooftop has developed some crack, right? Because there will be aggressive environment like aggressive heating and then cooling. Whereas the bucket that is in a controlled environment in a closed room, right? It may not having any sort of a deformation, right? So basically, what I'm trying to explain over here is with a particular type of the reinforcement under different heating cooling cycle, once my material will be proceeding, right? So how much deformation or how much there will be loss in the property that we are interested in this type of the with this type of the setup, right? Now if you see, if I take the example of the ABS, this was stable up to 190, whereas for ABS with some reinforcement of the banana fiber, the peak melting was increased, right? And in the repetitive cycle, this was of course within the particular range. So the similar observation was made for the polyamide 6 also. With the reinforcement of the banana fiber, the properties were really not compromised, rather these were improved. So what I can say, with this type of the reinforcement, I got a better thermal stability of the material, and I got a better material in place of the commercially existing material. Now you see in our country at different locations we have a different type of the agri waste, and definitely we can think of making our own feedstock filament, and we can print anything out of it as a functional and the non-functional parts. So we try to see some of the mechanical properties. Here you can see in properties in the form of load, then peak strength, sorry, these type of things. So we try to measure these type of the properties, and try to see how I'm getting the output in the form of better properties, right? So we can actually control any of the physical property, and then we can again use it for some particular application, right? So now I am sharing with you the other application, so that it may be more interesting and to understand in a better way. Sorry for the just click of my mouse again. So in this particular, I think you can see it clearly. Uh, uh, what we observed was in that previous case with the reinforcement, the mechanical properties like peak load, peak strength, elongation, their microstructure, all these properties were significantly improved with the reinforcement of this type of the material, right? So from this we got a one concluding remark from this particular case study, that the fabrication of the consumable for my 3D printer is very much possible, and I can make it from the waste, right, and use it for some useful application. Now this is the second case study in the 3D printing. Then we will move to the 4D, where we can basically use the setup for printing a energy storage device. So basically, I will take here. I am interested in developing some energy storage device in the form of dry cell. If you see a cell or a battery, which is a common consumable in daily use for some domestic application also, we call it as A3 batteries or a pencil cell. That is commonly used in our remotes or in wall clocks or number of applications or in toys and number of things, right? So once the useful life is over and that cell is not able to give me required potential difference with normally 1.5 volt, we used to throw it, right? Now if you just see, I cut the cell, we will see that it will be consisting of the four zones. I have a graphite coating, I have a zinc chloride and ammonium chloride, which is in the form of the electrolyte. Then I have a copper plate and I have a MnO2 layer in between. So once I assemble this in series, I got a required potential difference because of the chemical process. What we try to do is we try to arrange this material in the powder form, and we try to reinforce in the polymer so that we can use it for printing a cell, right? To do this, we have a standard procedure. So the first thing is to understand the rheology of the material. So if I understand the rheology, I can actually design that material for a typical application. So for this rheology, this is a test. You can see in this figure, I am using a MFI indexer, which I am calling as a melt flow indexer. This is as per ASTM D1238 standard. Actually, what we do over here is I put some material over here, a defined quantity, then apply a load. I have a temperature. Then here inside there is a barrel, and I am forcing through this piston the material to pass through the opening. Here I have a die and some defined quantity of the material in the form of the wire that is coming. So how much gram in 10 minutes is coming, that is basically called the MFI of the material. So what we did actually, we selected a ABS, right, as a basic matrix material, and then we try to put some quantity of the graphite into it. So initially, once we put 100% ABS, the MFI was coming as 9. So with the increase in the graphite proportion, like initially the 10%, the MFI was reduced. Then again, with the different proportion of the graphite, I got a different value of the MFI. Here you may have a question, why am I interested in MFI? Because this MFI is really a controlling factor if I am interested in printing this type of the material on my 3D printer. Normally for commercial open source 3D printer, this MFI is in the range of 2.5 to 3.5 gram per 10 minutes. And if you prepare some of the composite which can be used on my 3D printer within this range, I need not to do any sort of alteration on my hardware and the software of the system. So basically, we are interested in this rheological property MFI. This is just the reverse of the viscosity of the material, basically to understand how much gram per 10 minute my material is flowing. So what we did is we repeated this exercise with the reinforcement of graphite, then with the reinforcement of zinc chloride and ammonium chloride, and similarly with MnO2, and we try to see at which particular proportion I am getting almost MFI in a acceptable range. So you can see over here the 60-40 ratio for the graphite is giving me in the range of 2.5. Similarly for zinc chloride and ammonium chloride, again in the similar range. And once I am interested in MnO2, this may be some in the range of 55 45 that way, right? So we try to make the wires with this proportion, and those wires were fed to the 3D printer. Here you can see this is the 3D printing setup. Now I am printing the material in the form of the discs. Now these discs were assembled together and to get the desired quantity of the charge. Now if you see the cell, the dry cell, which normally completes its life, you will see only the consumable part is the electrolyte. Rest of the things are not consumable. Now the idea is, if I am printing the part in the form of the disk, right, then I can only replace that particular disk which is consumed. Now in place of replacing or throwing the whole cell, I can think of cells in the form of the disk, and I can print whatever part I require, right? And even this electrolyte part is going to be consumed, so I can think of printing this particular cell, and then I can assemble over there. So that is the thing that we can do with our own customized material. Then the another important aspect that we are getting is, since in a 3D printing we are having a design flexibility. Now, right now, what I am doing is, for fixing my battery on a particular platform, I need to have a cell in the form of a cylinder, right? So cylindrical shaped cells are normally there, or in some watches we have a button shaped cells. Basically, we are interested in some volume to surface area ratio, so the best ratio has been selected. But I can think of the cell in the form of a sticker, right? So I need a layer, so I can think of printing a cell in the form of a layer, so that the surface area contact I can manage. That is the beauty with a 3D printer, right? So what we did is we assembled, but we were not able to get the output. So you can see here is the assembly. So here are some copper wires. Now to get some output, what we did is we dropped some quantity of the acetone at the interface, so that if there is a hindrance by the outer layer of the polymer, so that it gets dissolved, and finally there should be a chemical reaction. So we were able to get the desired output. But what important we observed out of this is, the cells that we printed, we did for the thermal analysis of that particular cell. So what we observed in the thermal analysis, by working up to different temperature range, up to 95 degrees Celsius temperature, this composite is a stable, right? Similarly, up to minus 30, this composite was observed as stable. Now this is a great observation, because I can use this type of the cells at extremely high or extremely low temperature. And secondly, I can reuse the 40% of the material for as a consumable, right? So the thermoplastic material with a reinforcement and working at the extreme high temperature, this is the beauty that we get out of these 3D printed cells, right? So these are the two case studies that I have tried to explain about the use of the 3D printing for developing our own in-house based material as an innovative part. Now let us have a case study for the 4D printing. Let us understand the concept with by developing our own stimulus with the a simple example of the physics. Now what I am doing over here is, I am printing the layers, the multiple layers, in such a way that I have a conducting and non-conducting set of the layers, right? So what now I am trying to do is, I am trying to print
Sir, hello, sir. Now it's not audible. Excuse me, sir.
You can see much more clearly the details of the black face.
Not audible, sir.
Sir, please unmute yourself.
Is this clear to all? Is this clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, please. Is
Yes,
this
sir.
example clear to all?
Yes, sir. Now it is audible.
Are you able to hear or not?
Yes, sir. Now it's audible, sir.
Is it audible? Is it audible?
Yes, sir.
Please?
Now it's. Yes, sir. Now it's audible.
Yes, please. Is it audible?
Yes, sir.
Now it's audible, sir.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir. I
Yes,
think
sir.
your end there is some technical problem.
Right now you can hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So I will continue. Okay. So are you able to see that video? Okay.
No, sir.
Okay, I am again showing that part again so that it may be more clear. So here is the 3D printed part I am trying to show over here. This is the layer by layer I am interested to print some part, and in this particular video you can see this is the effect of the transducer that we were seeing with a multiple layer by layer flow of the current in a parallel direction and in a counter parallel direction. So we were able to 3D print that part. Right, so this is basically helping me in the 4D property. Now here in this particular example, what I am trying to show you is as a 4D capability of my material, I am basically using the material as a combination of ultrasonic machining with a broaching process together. So all of you may be knowing what is the ultrasonic machining process. So in a typical USM process, I have some transducer. I am interested to put this material over this as a transducer. Then I have a amplifier, and then here is a tool which is basically not in contact with the workpiece, and some slurry is flowing between the gap of the tool and the workpiece, and there is a replication of the tool profile over the workpiece. What actually we are doing through 3D and 4D assisted printing is in a typical tool over here. I am basically making a tool in three parts, right? In a first zone, I am increasing the I am making first it with a polymer up to the zone 1, which is the roughing zone. I am using a coarse size of alumina. Then in a semi finishing zone, we are using a relatively fine particle of alumina,
then in the super finishing zone, a very fine abrasive of alumina. And then, just once the tool will be entering into the through the ultrasonic mode, and it will be performing the drilling operation. There will be a combination of broaching as well as ultrasonic machining. So this is one of the patent that is lying with us on this particular USM application. And similarly, you can think of hybridizing with EDM. You can think of hybridizing with magnetic abrasive machining, then with different type of applications. So this is the another innovative in design part that I want to share with you, that is very important in 3D printing. You see, once I go for the 3D printing part, normally we have a circular nozzle, and because of the circular nozzle, the output part, the layer which is in the form of the ellipse. So this is basically is called the Baru effect. Now if you see, if I print my part, it will be something like that. So here you will see there will be a air gap. So what we can do for the innovation in the design part is, I can think of playing with my different type of the nozzle. So what I can do is we can have a change in the design of the nozzle from circle to this type of a shape, where after the the polymer is going to sort of expansion is there, it will be resulting into the triangular part. So I will be depositing the triangular layers, right? And then in the second layer, I will basically use a stepper motor and change the direction of the depositing of these type of the layers, and I will put the inverted triangles. Now you will see here the air gap will be less. So finally, I can think of the innovation in a way, just by playing with a nozzle design. I can think of getting the different type of the air gap, and finally I am able to control the surface finish of the part. Similarly, you can think of the multiple, if you have a multiple nozzle, you can think of putting the layers in a way that it is giving me the better compactness, right, and as well as the high production rate. Now I am going to explain with a case study about the 4D printing for a typical structural engineering application. This is the one of the project that we are doing under the DST sponsored project. Here I am interested in a customized solution for the heritage structure. So this is one of the heritage building that has been selected for the maintenance under the 3D printing tool, with the use of 3D printing tool. But actually the problem is, suppose I have some heritage wall, and just imagine this side of the wall is accessible to me, and this size of the wall is not accessible to me, and I have the cavity like this, right? Now if I have a cavity and I have to fill this, I can think of using a solution which is like a epoxy based solution. So there are a lot of companies like Hilti is there, one of the international companies there, which can help me in filling this type of the cavity, right? So this is a epoxy based sort of a adhesive type solution. Now there is a second case. Once the size of the entry size of the cavity is large, but on the rear side the cavity is small, then even you can fill the cavity like this. But there can be a third case. Once the entry is small and the cavity at the rear end, it is having some intricate shape. Now for this type of the situation, some epoxy based material may not fill the cavity properly. So what we need to do is a separate solution with a sort of a smart material which can actually take the shape of the cavity, right? So for this purpose, what we are doing is, the first is the crack detection using some 3D laser scanning, because I am interested in getting a exact dimension of the cavity. Then I am interested in the volume of the cavity, and then putting some smart material into it, which once enter into the cavity is normally contracted, right, so that it can enter well. And once it is inside the cavity, then it is expanding, right, so that it can take the shape of the cavity. So this is actually the 4D part as the self expansion. So I am interested in some material which can self expand, and I am printing the part using a 3D printer for this. So these are some of the sites over which we are working. There are some bridges over here, right, which were made during the British period, something around 1900 to 1907. And this is the one of the building that has been of the Mughal period, built something around 1527. So different old heritage structures, they required different type of the maintenance. So we are interested in making some smart solutions. Now, typically in these type of the bridge structures, you see here we have a typical curve structure over here. Right now, the whole structure is of a single composite material, but you see this lower section is under the compressive load, whereas this outer section is under the tensile load. But what we are doing is we are using a simple single solution for this type of the structure. So we are interested in some smart solution for these type of the structures. So in this particular example, to put our point, we selected three different material. One is ABS, another was PLA, and third was the HIPS. And these three different materials were selected because they have a significant difference in their properties. You can see in this table, if I see the MFI of the HIPS as the observed value, this was 7.5, whereas for the selected grade of ABS, it was 8.7, whereas as for PLA, it was 13.52. You can see the flow properties are significantly different. Now, similarly, if you see the Young modulus of the material, for the HIPS, it was 112, for the ABS, it was 175, and then for PLA, it was 47. Then if you see about the yield stress, there is a difference, then there is a difference in the glass transition, then peak load, peak strength, these type of the mechanical properties, all these three materials were different, right? So we try to see how they behave on a 3D printer, right? So we selected some of the fixed parameter. One open source 3D printer has been used. So the dia of the nozzle we fixed, dia of the filament we fixed, then layer height, the number of layers that we are printing, then their filling pattern, their printing speed, their travel speed, extrusion temperature. There are around 15 parameters, 15, that can be controlled on this type of the commercial printer. That some of the parameters we kept fixed, and we try to explore what is the effect on the output property. Here actually what we did is, for some of the experiment we put the ABS on the top, for some of the parameters we put the PLA on the top, and for some of the parameters we put the HIPS on the top, and we followed some DOE. It may be Taguchi, RSM, any DOE you can think of, and then you try to see what is the effect. Now you see here are some of the tensile coupons that we try to print with the different phases, like in this case PLA on the top, then ABS on the top, then in case the HIPS on the top, like that way. Now you can see over here, this is a typical stress strain curve that we try to develop with a single material. So this is for a PLA, you can see, then for the ABS, then for the HIPS, and you can see the area under the curve that is basically giving me the the modulus of toughness, right? So basically responsible for the impact strength of that particular material. Like in our previous case for establishing some smart materials, we try to see their thermal properties. So similarly, we try to see how these thermal properties of this type of the material is there. So you can see for ABS, in the heating cycle, it was absorbing around 13.63, but in cooling, it was releasing almost same. Whereas for PLA, there was a loss in the property, like it was taking 14.7, but it was releasing 10.8. So there is a property loss. Similarly, for the HIPS, this was almost in a acceptable range, right? So we can see that PLA is definitely going to degrade, right? So we have to be a little careful by selecting a particular proportion for this type of the analysis. Then we, based on some DOE, we try to print the different parts, and you can see the stress strain curve for the different materials that has been observed on a standard UTM, right? What we see over here now, this is really important for the beginners. We try to see the microstructure part of the these 3D printed components. Now you see over here in this particular figure, this is a single material 3D printed, and I have taken the optical photomicrograph at the 30x magnification. This is simply on a toolmaker microscope. We have taken these images. We can always take it on SEM, right? So you see over here, the different layers were printed one over the another. right? And I got a typical staircase effect once we are working on a single material. So this was for the ABS, this was for the PLA, and this was for the hips, right? So you can see the typical effect of the staircase effect. But once we go for the multi-material printing, right, here I am having a ABS, right? So on ABS, once I print a PLA, so there is a side flow of the material. You can see over here, there is a sort of a globule formation, right? Whereas in the third case, I can have over here, if I put a PLA and then hips, then ABS, then there is not a problem. Now you see over here, if I use this proportion as explained in this experiment number 1, it must have a loss in the property. So that I can always correlate with my stress strain curve. In this, you can see for this experiment number 1, I have a minimum area under the curve. So that means the strength of the part for the curve 1 that has been for this particular case in which hips was on the top, PLA was sandwiched between the hips and the ABS, I must have a loss in the property. So typically as a mechanical engineering application for this type of the sandwich material or the multi-material, I can think of selecting a particular material in the middle or in the top or like that way. So accordingly, I can always correlate with the optical microscope based photomicrographs as well as with the tensile properties that I have achieved. So one thing I can say is using a innovative 3D printing, I can think of a multi-material printing. I can think of improving the properties. Like here are some of the conclusions. Like you see over here, for a peak hips, the strength is peak strength is 4.21. Whereas once we have a multi-material printing, the overall composite resulted into the improved strength of 10.78. Right, so you can think of this type of the strength in the compressive mode, in the pull-out mode, right? Then in the tensile mode, so different modes you can think of, right? So, but one of the major conclusion of this work is you can think of multi-material printing in such a way, like I have given you the example of the arc-based bridge, in which the top layer was under the tensile load and the inner layer was under the compressive load. So I can think of putting the material in such a way that the material that is having a better tensile property, it should be printed on the top, and with a better compressive property, it should be printed in the inner side. Now just try to correlate this thing with that surface crack phenomenon that I have shown you in the form of a animation video. What we are interested is if I can print a sort of a coupon or your rectangular strip. I am interested in filling inside a cavity in which the top layer is requiring a tensile property and the inner layer is requiring a compressive property. I can think of these type of combinations, and I can think of adding a different type of the smartness in my material, which will be helping in attaining a 4D capabilities. Similarly, there is another case study I am interested to show quickly. This is for dentistry, for typical 3D printing. Here actually for 4D application, what we use is a nano HAP particles. This HAP is basically we selected from the kitchen waste. This is, the eggshells, those are having a HAP particles, and the 96% composition of those HAP particles is very much similar to what our human teeth is. So we prepared the feedstock filament that way, and we try to use that feedstock filament for the printing of the crowns. So this is some of the historical cut we can leave. Typically, we can design a denture, we can have a mandible or maxillary teeth, and finally using a traditional way of making the teeth, I can make it, and you can see over here the similar way we followed. We try to prepare the feedstock filament, we try to print the wire, and finally we try to print the crowns. Here only the difference is I am having the reinforcement of a HAP particles. Now these HAP particles, they are having a capability of the self-growing type thing, right? So basically they give a platform over which some osteoblast cell can grow. And finally, if I make a crown of this type of the material, this will be helping. Initially, I have to put some adhesive, but after some time, so this will be, having a self-adhesive type nature, because some natural type growth will be there, right? So we can think of a self-growing capability for these type of the dentures for making it more compatible with the human requirement. This is also because of the self growth, little towards the adding the fourth dimension into the 3D printed part. Okay, then we can think of applications in orthopedic. Here some orthopedic implant has been prepared. This is the, like, similarly using a 3D printing, I can think of making a polymer based pattern. I can think of making it as a investment casting tree, then using a slurry coating. Then like a typical investment casting, we can think of putting it in a heating environment and removing like a dewaxing stage, and then I can think of adding a casting into it. Now this is something conventional. Now what will be the 4D part over here is, here we have one of our patent within this process. What we actually did is we tried to have some reinforcement of material which is in the form of the HAP particles, which was put into the polymer part, because of these HAP particles, they can withstand the high temperature even up, because these are ceramic type materials, right? So I can think of making some functionally graded material. Like I'm interested in basically a layer by layer material approach, in which the different layers are having a different type of the properties, right? So we patented one process that is called FDM assisted investment casting, in which the reinforcement was controlled for a typical these type of the material properties, and then of course we try to ascertain their grain structure. Now this is the another example to put our point of self-growing. Here what we have done is we did the reinforcement of PLA with the hydroxyapatite and chitosan, and we try to make some feedstock filament. You can see over here. Now this hydroxyapatite, again I have already explained that this is helping to grow the tissues, and the literature says if I can print it the material with the reinforcement of 8% of the chitosan, 8% of the hydroxyapatite, which is one of the kitchen waste from the eggshell, and chitosan 1 to 2%. This helps me in better biocompatibility. So we try to prepare those type of the feedstock filament. We try to do their thermal analysis, how they are behaving with a different level of the reinforcement, and try to see their microstructure in the SEM. What we observed is we got a open, porous, and the fibrous structure, and they were giving us a good opportunity to have an interwoven type structure. This is having a typical application in biomedical, specifically in veterinary as well as human patients. Once we are interested in the replacement of some of the bone type parts, once there is a breakage of the bone, or because of there is a trauma patient, some accident, some bone part has been lost, so we want it as a replacement of the part, and we can think of using a biocompatible PLA with the reinforcement of HAP and chitosan. Normally the PLA it will come out from the body with no harm to the body, and the HAP and chitosan will help in growing the natural bones. So this is again typically a 4D application for the biomedical, right? I can think of using this type of the material for the tooling also. Like I have already explained, we can think of making a wire. We can think of a reinforcement with different type of the ceramic materials. Like in this particular example, for clinical dentistry, we try to prepare some of the inserts in the form of the pins, right? So some Al2O3 reinforcement has been there. So we try to see their wear mechanism, and as a typical production engineer or a manufacturing engineer, you can always think of making your own insert sort of things, and then you can have a wear property comparison. Some wear tracks have been developed. So without reinforcement, you can see there is a thick wear track, and with the reinforcement, the material loss was less. So some discussion we can think of on the wear mechanism, And then one of the important thing over here is using this type of the material as a stimulus for some typical application. Now I am going to before I conclude my talk, I can think of using this type of material maybe for medical application, maybe for structural application, maybe for typical mechanical engineering application as a live example of some 4D part. So to understand this, let us quickly see this. So firstly, I have to establish a rheology. Then I have to prepare a feedstock filament using some extrusion process. Then some printing of the part is there. So in this particular example that I am going to show you, we are using a PLA, we are using a PVC, we are using a magnetite powder, and we are using a wood dust. Why I am showing this case study? This is one of the work that we have done with our collaborator. Basically, we are interested in developing some of the in-house cabins where the temperature outside the cabin is -40, and we want to conserve some heat, typically in some part of the Canada and US, and we want to reduce the timber or the wood requirement because of the depletion of the natural resources. So all of you may be knowing that PVC paneling is very common use for some decorative purpose, but once the luster of the PVC is gone, so we have to just throw it out, right? So what this basically adds to the plastic solid waste management problem. So what we did is we selected a PLA as a biocompatible polymer which was reinforced with PVC, and then to have a properties like wood, right? So we use a wood dust, and to have some magnetic effect of a self-assembly type nature for 4D, we reinforced with some of the magnetite powder, right? So based on this, we selected the different composition of the material, right? Based on the composition, some parametric optimization using some DOE on a twin screw extruder was made. And now this will be really important to see. We are interested in some of the magnetic properties. Here I am interested in magnetization, corrosivity, and retentivity. Basically, I am interested in using this magnetic field as a stimulus so that I can have a better BH curve. So that once I print some part, actually I'm interested in printing a tile. So just imagine I have a frame of the metal in which the metal wires are there, right? So if I give a particular current to this, so this whole section will get magnetized, right, because of the electromagnetic waves and all. Now if I put a sort of a printed tile over here, so it will get stick to this, right? So I will put a particular number of tiles, and then I will do just the screwing operation, just the fastening operation, and then I can switch off the the electric field, right? But I can have a permanent assembly. Now after a few days I am interested in some other shape, I can again switch on the power, right? And I can disassemble and think of a new assembly type sort of thing, right? So for that purpose I am interested in how much quantity of the magnetic field will be required, how much corrosivity will be there. Like magnetization is how easily I can magnetize. Then if I just switch off the magnetic field, how much retentivity it will be having once this magnetic field will be over. The corrosivity is the value that is required to me. Just if I change the direction of the magnetic field, or to make it zero, how much opposite direction magnetic field I have to apply. So that is the three things that we observed from this BH curve. Okay. So based on this, we did some parametric optimization, then some EDS based analysis for this type of the material, and we are trying to have a single blend and multi blend material. Like in this particular typical example, you can see for a selected grade of PLA with the number of repetitive observation, I was able to get the MFI in the range of 28. For PVC, it was 25. So we try to reinforce different quantity of PVC in PLA. Right, so particular reinforcement level was selected. Similarly for Fe3O4 reinforcement in PLA, then in a single blend, in a multi blend, so different number of experiments were tried, and we tried to ascertain their peak load, peak elongation, break load, break elongation, peak strength, break strength, Young modulus, modulus of toughness, these type of thing for the different compositions. We try to develop some stress strain curves, their hardness, Then, like to our previous case, the thermal analysis, how this particular material is going to behave under the effect of the varying temperature, like in different heating cooling cycle. So these type of the observations we try to make, and based on this, we can think of the different smart materials for typical 4D applications. Like we can think of reinforcement in ABS of graphene. So again, because I am interested in different type of the materials, so how it will behave, so their flow properties, their thermal properties, their magnetic properties. Similarly, for some other material like PVDF, barium titanate, these all are piezo property material, how they behave under the different applications, different type of the magnetic field, their thermal properties, and we try to see their piezo properties. We try to ascertain how much piezoelectric property in form of D33 constant volumetric change it can absorb. For a typical success engineering application, we try to ascertain all those things, right? So finally, at the end, before I conclude, this last thing that I want to discuss with you, like a single step, have some polymer, then with some type of a reinforcement, like in this case ZNO was reinforced, wire was prepared, feedstock filament, doing some thermal analysis depending upon the composition. Now what we did is we print a U-shaped component, then we try to see how much there is a effect of the temperature and the water together. So we tried to see the two stimulus. One was water, so we put it for 5 hours in water, and then after 5 hours we just removed it and try to see what is the change, volumetric change in that particular material, right? And what is the effect at 25 degree, at 40 degrees Celsius temperature. So what we observed that for a particular composition, a particular type of stimulus is behaving in a better way, and we try to see the effect at different temperature, and we were able to get up to 99.9% change in the recovery, means there is a change in dimension, and with a different stimulus the recovery was up to 99.9% in some of the cases. So we try to ascertain that recovery part with their microstructure, and we try to see why this recovery was good in some of the cases. So that has been correlated with the porosity level of these type of the materials. So this is the overview that I have tried to give you for the different 3D and 4D applications. Now you can think of any applications and in different areas, and definitely if I know the stimulus, it may be a single stimulus or the combination of the stimulus, I can have a customized properties. So this is the thing that I want to discuss all of you. I think I have been a little fast, but I have made my point of using some 3D and 4D applications. Now I am open for any question or discussion, please. Any questions I would like to answer. Yes.
Hello. Participants, you can please unmute yourself and go ahead with your query.
Hello.
Yes, please.
Yes, sir. Good morning, sir.
Yes, please.
Sir, yeah, I wanted to know that is it possible to print 4D in SLA, stereolithography, or a digital light printing machine?
Yes, definitely. So the printing is 3D. You can even think of some metal parts also, or any other technology also. But you have to see what is the stimulus that is affecting that particular part, printed material. Right? So there are photosensitive materials also. So there can be a different type of the stimulus, but it should behave in a controlled manner. That is the requirement only.
Okay. Sir, is there any specific requirement or how to choose a resin or a reinforcement to print a 4D material?
You see the other way. I have some application where I am interested in 4D or 5D or multiple dimensional capabilities. Then you think of the material for that. Don't think the material first and then see the application. See the problem first and then see the application. Like for example, I give you one idea. We have a temperature sensor. We have a gas sensors. right? So just see how these type of sensing materials are working. I can think of making those type of sensors with better control using a 3D printing as a design tool, and that 3D printed part I can think of adding a sensing capabilities. So that will solve my purpose.
Sir, what exactly a smart material when compared to a conventional ABS or PLA?
The smartness is that it is responding in a controlled manner with respect to some stimulus. That is only the smartness. Like for example, I have a piezoelectric crystal. If I put a load to the piezoelectric crystal, it increases its dimension. Now I release a load, it will come back to the original dimension. In place of some piezoelectric material, if I use some normal material, this will not behave in a that controlled manner. So the expansion and contraction will be compromised in number of cycles. So the smartness is coming for this particular material is the controlled movement. That is why I am using this type of the material for some transducer application, right? So the smartness is in sort of a repetition. In a I'm getting the property, same property. It may be in form of a mechanical deformation. It may be in the form of some color changing. It may be in the form of some smell, something like that, right? And but that is repetitive in nature. So that is basically the smartness is.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So any other query, please?
Hello, hello,
Yes,
sir.
please.
First of all, thank you, sir, for these great insights. Actually, during my master's, I under Professor Devadatta Misra, sir, who is also one of the coordinator here, have developed a part that was embedding of shape memory alloy into a 3D printed part. So at that time, we faced a lot of problem for controlling of the shape changing capability. So, sir, any suggestions regarding that? Because at that time we made a robotic gripper. It was in 2017. So, which was able to grab things inside the hot water, but the controlling part was a little tricky. And also, I want to know if you have done life cycle analysis and fatigue analysis of the shape changing parts that you have printed.
See, as regard to the life cycle analysis is concerned, once we call it as a smart material, definitely the smartness is for repetitive cycles, right? So if I am not able to get it in good number of repetitive cycles, then definitely this will be of a little use. So what I am trying to show you is let us say the thermal property. I'm trying to show that DSC curves in which the heating capacity, like energy absorbing and energy releasing, was almost in a similar range. So that is basically a approach we used for the life cycle analysis for the repetitive cycles. And what we observed is up to the 20 cycles, means 20 sort of repetitions, we were able to get the similar type of the observations. So we consider that material to be relatively acceptable in the market. As regard to the mechanical properties are concerned, definitely we observed it for some of the materials with PVDF and BATiO3 reinforcement, and we were able to get a very good piezoelectric result in the form of picocoulomb per Newton. That is basically a value of the D33, that is the volumetric change, and at the 4.5 kV, so we were able to get that result. Then your question was for a particular application in a gripper at a particular temperature. So we also observed that some of the material, they behave very good at particular temperature. So specifically for the thermoplastic materials, we are interested in the TG of the material. So TG is basically the glass transition temperature of the material. So if we are working in that TG range, I am getting a better result as compared to if I am moving away from that TG range. So that is one of the observation with us. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir. And any suggestions regarding dynamic mechanical analysis that you have done for your experiment?
Yes, we have done DMA for some of our parts, and we try to find out storage modulus, loss modulus, and tan delta. What we observed was these type of things were dependent upon some of the process parameters, specifically the infill density, and of course the raster angle was also playing some of the important part. So for the better DMA results, what we observed was we have to go for metamaterial type printing. So that was giving us a better result for the in the form of storage modulus and loss modulus of the material.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Great insights. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any more queries?
Any
Do we
other
have any more
queries from any other participant? You can please go ahead.
Hello.
Yeah, please.
Yes, sir. What are the challenges we face during SLA 4D printing?
See, you take it in another way. I am not interested in 4D printing. I am interested in printing in 3 dimension only. The fourth
Okay.
dimension I am getting as a output of some stimulus. So if I am stimulating maybe through electric field, through magnetic field, through mechanical loading, through some chemical, then I am getting, if I am getting some desired output, then of course I will call it as a 4D material. Right?
Okay.
If I'm getting the effect of two stimulus, right, and that again a controlled one, then it will add the fifth dimension. So
Okay.
basically, I will go the another way. I have some application where I need some smartness in my material, and then I will
Okay.
see which particular stimulus is going to affect that thing. So
Okay.
I will say in this way, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Then what are the challenges while printing in SLA? So if I use some reinforcement in a photopolymer, so how it could be, or how the challenges we need to face? What are those? Can I know?
What I observe in case of typical photopolymers, once we were doing some FTIR and PLS analysis, what we observed is for this type of the material, we have a serious issues with respect to the absorbance and transmittance of the material. Right?
Okay.
So we have to be like for typical sensor application, if you are interested in with 4D capabilities, then the reinforcement really creates a problem, because if you see the peaks of the FTIR and PLS, you will observe that this help me. This basically hinders their absorbance and transmittance spectrum, and I'm not able to use this for typical light sensor type applications. So you have
Yeah.
to be really careful about selecting a particular size of the reinforcement, level of the reinforcement for these type of the things, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Sir, what about the exposure time and the layer height and all those?
See, this
Definitely,
is
it will
again,
place.
it will vary from setup to setup.
Yeah.
Like for example, I'm working on nowadays on a metal printing, and I have a 300-watt laser. So if
Okay.
your machine is having a 100-watt laser, and definitely you are making a same dimension part, I can think of making the part, curing the part fast, as compared to with some other machine where there will be a small size laser, right? A
Okay.
small wattage of the laser. So I think that is uh, uh, a machine specific type sort of thing. Right. So that can be customized at individual level by doing some sequence of experimentation for the optimizing that particular part, right?
Yeah.
So in the generic term, what we have to do is we have to see fundamentally, based upon the law of the physics, whether this material is definitely good for me for giving me this type of the output or not. Rest thing we as a technical person, we can manage
Yeah,
with
sir.
sequence of experiments, right?
Okay.
So
Sir, I have another question.
yeah, just one thing I want to say.
Yeah, sir.
Like for example, if you see people talk about in the papers that I have used this orientation, this raster angle, this layer height,
Yeah, yeah.
so these type of things, these are specific to the part geometry, and of course the setup you are using.
Okay.
The general public may not be interested in this, so he or she will be interested only the setup he or she is having,
Okay.
right? So what we are trying to explain is based on the basic physics of the process.
Mhm.
Yeah. So please go ahead with your second question.
Yes, sir. When comes to reinforcement, all the reinforcement may not give good bonding to the reinforcement or a covalent bond between the reinforcement and the resin. So, how to know the best reinforcement which will give the covalent bond to the particular resin? Is it possible? Is there any chance if we go look into the chemistry or physics or atomic level, is it possible before going to print a particular resin reinforcement composite? Is it possible?
Yes, definitely. If you know what is the material of your, base material and what is the reinforcement, you can have a, for specifically for the polymer base, you can have a guide for, there is a handbook for FTIR analysis, which will
Okay.
tell you if you have this type of the reinforcement, right? So what sort of bonding it will result into, whether you are getting a covalent bond, single bond, double bond, or these type of things, and they will give you FTIR peaks also, right? So that will be really a great help in deciding, because there are many good publisher. I know there is a handbook published by Elsevier for the FTIR analysis. I think for all the polymers and their possible reinforcement, they have given the FTIR curves. You will have some idea, and you can just quickly see this type of the reinforcement, what sort of a FTIR peaks I am going to get, and what sort of a bonding it will be. Yeah, you can
So
definitely have an idea.
yeah, you're telling that before going to print, we can have a look how the bonding will be between the reinforcement and the polymer by using the FTR curves.
Definitely, you just need to know the base material and the reinforcement. That's it.
Okay, sir. Sir, can you tell that book name? Just I want to go through.
Just do the Google handbook on FTIR.
Yeah, one book came, CRC Press, Handbook of Near Infrared Analysis.
There is I have a handbook. This is a physical science data handbook of Fourier transform and Raman infrared spectroscopy. This is by Elsevier that I am using with my place.
Okay.
So there are many books you can just download it. There are many freewares also, and there are some software sports also which will help you what sort of a bonding you will be getting out of this.
Okay, sir.
I can if just I am searching if I can show you one table. There it is well written what sort of a peak you will be getting. Just if you can see, I'm just trying to share one screen with you.
Okay, sir. Okay, sure, sure. Sir, you're telling elsewhere book only, no? Handbook of Fourier Transform Raman and Infrared Spectra of Polymers.
Yeah, you just see this is. Can you see this PDF?
Yeah, sir. Yeah, yeah. Polymer classification guide.
There is guide. Yeah. So this guide is basically helping me. They have made some series, and like you can see, some numbering is there. So accordingly, what sort of a reinforcement you are making, and what sort of a peak and bonding it will be giving, it is already in the form of the handbook.
Okay.
Right. So this will help you, I suppose.
Sir, is it there in that particular handbook?
Yes, yes, it is very much there in the handbook.
Yeah. Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So, do we have any more queries or?
Sir, if you allow, we can take up the last one.
Yeah.
That is, what is the scope for getting a functionally graded material plate having metal and ceramic combination, and what is the economical aspect? Scope for preparing FGM, functionally graded material plate with metal and ceramic combination.
Which process you want to use?
3D printing. For 3D printing, they are asking.
Of course, you are interested in functionally graded material, and you are interested in, through the metal printing route or through polymer printing route. Which route you want
Basically,
to
they want to have a plate of FGM, and the combination will be a metal and ceramic.
No, metal and ceramic is okay, but we can have it through two routes. One is through the polymer printing, and second is through the metal printing. Let me explain how.
Okay.
For example, you can have a polymer based master, and then you can have a investment casting, right? So you can have a multiple stage investment casting, which will be definitely cheaper, right? What I'm trying to say is, actually we have a process patented for developing a functionally graded material through polymer reinforced metals for functionally graded materials. So that is the one route. Of course, that will be the cheaper one. And the second is, you can think of using a powder fusion bed technology, that is DMLS. You can think of using a different wattage of the laser, and then printing the different type of the material. Of course, the polymer and ceramics, that is very much possible, and you can fuse that particular material. Only the problem with this powder fusion bed is, you have to be really careful about the fineness of the powder. It should not be, the size should not be more than 10 to 20 microns. So to get that powder is really costly. So the possibility is definitely there through the metal printing also, through the fusion bed technology, as well as through the polymer, through investment casting route also. And definitely the investment casting route will be the cheaper one. Yeah. Is it answered? Is the query answered?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, participants, let us thank Professor Singh for extending his expertise in the domination of this FDP. Sir, I thank you on behalf of our department, our university, as well as the participants, for accepting our invitation within a very short span of notice. And thank you for providing a deep insight on the domain. Thank you, sir. We look forward for future collaborations as well.
Sir, can we have your contact?
That I will provide you.
This is with the organization.
Yeah, sir.
I will provide you the details.
Okay,
thank
you
you,
very
sir.
much.
Thank you very much.
Professor. Thanks for the opportunity.
Participants, we will start the next session at 3:30 p.m. So please join 15 minutes prior to that. Thank you. Thank you, sir.